Mysterious Domain Movie Palace Summer Drive-In Double Feature Special. Our main film this July here is from 1967 and it's called Games. This film was suggested to me by a subscriber and I checked it out, and what I discovered was, it's not so gothic or whatever, but it is a really good thriller. And it is 1967, so it's a little bit edging toward that 1970s kind of grittiness. I find for me, like the films in the 40s and the 60s particularly are very romantic, which I like personally. They're very romantic and have a lot of fantasy and imagination in them. And good usually wins over evil. But as you get into the 70s, that seems to go away. It's more realistic, right? And again, the good guys don't always win in the 70s. So I won't tell you what happens in this one, but it is about a young New York couple, very rich. They like to play their parties, they like to play all these mind games, and there's tarot cards in this one, and they think they're so clever and smart, They're hip, they're groovy. And so it's directed by Curtis Harrington, who also directed Night Tide, which you'll also find in the Mysterious Domain Movie Palace. It's very different, though. And he was the somnambulist in the German expressionist film The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. That was kind of how he started. He also kind of worked with Kenneth Anger, who I'm not really a fan of. He worked with Roger Corman, and he was also very involved in the old dark house type of films inspired by James Whale's Old Dark House. He really wanted to save films like that. Now, there's this couple in New York, this kind of 1960s rich New York couple that live in this brownstone that's huge and, that whole thing. And the wife is played by Katherine Ross, who I always think of as sort of Anne Hathaway the first, or maybe Anne Hathaway is Katherine Ross the second. I don't know, but Katherine Ross was pretty much a big star in the 60s and 70s and the 80s. She was in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. She was in Games with Simone Signoret, who I will talk about in a minute, and Simone Signoret recommended her to be in The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman and Bancroft. So then when Katherine Ross was in The Graduate, that's what launched her career, and she became a star. She was in The Singing Nun, too, Dominica, Nika, Nika, that one. And she was also in The Stepford Wives, which she won an award for. She won an award for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. She won an award for Stepford Wives. And really, was married 5 times and ended up with Sam Elliott. So, there you go. They seem like a good couple to me. And the husband is played by James Caan before he even looks like James Caan. I mean, he's so young that he's got like a baby face, and he doesn't even look like himself quite yet. I mean, you can tell it's him, but he's like just starting out, And everyone knows James Caan. He's a big star, he got launched in The Godfather, of course. And there's a funny story about him during The Godfather in 1971, where he hung out with a guy called Carmine Persico. who was also known as the Snake. And he was a notorious mafioso and head of the Colombo crime family. And the government agents actually thought that James Caan was an aspiring mafioso. So he was kind of being trailed, as he's hanging out with this guy. I mean, well, why was he hanging out with him? That's not he's doing his method acting, I suppose. Another funny story about him is they wanted him to play Superman, but he turned it down because he didn't want to wear the cape. There's a saying among costume designers in the theater that I'd probably be I was censored if I told this joke, but it's never give a cape. Anyway, but he was born on March 25th, and Simone Signoret, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, was born on March 26th, and they both were he was in a stage play of Laurent, and she was in a film of Laurent. So those two are a good connection, I suppose. And then I remember James Caan throughout my life. I remember him in Brian's Song, where he played a terminally ill football player, and that was a big tearjerker on TV. And then I saw him in Rollerball, which I was like this in Rollerball. It was too violent for me. I don't like violence like that. And so that freaked me out. So then he took a break, and then he came back, and then he was in Misery, which I never saw because, again, I don't like that kind of violence. The acting might have been great and all this, but I'm not a fan of torture and that sort of thing. So James Caan, of course, so we've got Katherine Ross and James Caan, so we have an all-star cast already, and then we get Simone Signoret, like a grande dame of the movies. And she plays this mysterious woman who comes to kind of live in their apartment, their brownstone, whatever. Simone Signoret has this gravity about her, and it's all she has to do is say the lines, And she hasn't. Her backstory is like, I don't know. I guess she has an autobiography, but what a story she has. In fact, Simone Signoret and James Caan both have really interesting biographies because they both lived through some stuff. She was a German, actually, and her father was Jewish. He was both a Polish and Hungarian Jew, but he was born in France, and her mother was a French Catholic. So she had both sides going on to make her a good old Gothic actress. When she got involved in theater through a kind of bohemian kind of scene, and she got involved in acting and ended up having to support her family during the Nazi occupation in France. And her father ran off to join de Gaulle, and she's had quite an interesting life, So she often was typecast in prostitute roles because she was so kind of earthy and kind of sensual looking and very no nonsense type of person. She's seen it all, You know what I mean? Now this film, Games, is based on a film that she'd been in the 50s called Diabolique. And I saw Diabolique years ago. And it was a black and white film, I believe, in the 50s. And it didn't impress me that much. The Games, I can't say. I'd have to watch Diabolique again, but I think Games is a better film. I'm just going to say that. So anyway, she had a bunch of marriages, and then she ended up with Yves Montand until she passed away at 64. So we lost her a little early. But she is really good in this film. I mean, once she comes on, she just owns it. And then there's a guy called Don Stroud, who was also in a lot of Westerns and a lot of TV. And he was in The Ballad of Josie Wales and, a bunch. He was in Bloody Mary of Roger Corman, and he was with Clint Eastwood also in Coogan's Bluff, and he just did a lot of those kind of genre films that came out at that time. And he's a really big guy, so he often played a villain because, he's tall and he's broad, and he was in the Amityville Horror. So he has a big resume, TV shows and all kinds of stuff. So you might recognize him. He does a good job. Now, another one of our surprise actors in this film is Kent Smith, and you'll recognize him if you've been watching Val Lewton's film like Cat People and Curse of the Cat People. And he plays a lawyer, and it was interesting looking him up because he's got a really massive career. I only knew him from those Cat People films. But he was working all the time, and he's one of those actors that can probably play the everyman, the everyman type. And he was also in Peyton Place, which was a huge phenomenon in the 60s, a soap opera with Mia Farrow. Now you'll also see a party here. There's always parties in these films, isn't there? This is a party, and you'll see different people that were maybe like in Corridor of Mirrors. They were up and coming, or they were kind of just there hanging out. Like you'll see Estelle Winwood, you'll see Luana Anders as a party guest. So you were so good at spotting people in the scene in Corridor of Mirrors that people I didn't really know because they're more British. So you might spot some in this film as well. And, it's got a really quirky, complex plot. I think the plot is really full of surprises. It's never a dull moment. Apparently, Katherine Ross, she didn't really like this film for some reason. Maybe it was a bit too dark for her because she's, raindrops are falling on her head and all that. So maybe it was just too dark for her. And it is kind of, it is pretty dark, but it's also very jazzy, I suppose you could say. New York jazzy. And it has an ending you don't expect. And the whole thing is just really well crafted as a screenplay. So give kudos to Curtis Harrington and, these new movie stars, James Caan and Katherine Ross. I will say this, if you watch these on your phone, then you're going to get the ads. If you watch it on your laptop or something, you're less likely to get the ads. And I don't put the ads on there, YouTube does. I don't make any money from this. So I don't get any ad revenue, I get nothing. So that's why I have Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. So if you want to buy me a coffee, it's in the description. And thank you to those of you who have bought me a coffee. I've had this month where I'm having to move, and I've had allergies, and I've had 100 things. My car, don't ask me about my car. So that's why I'm a little late with these, and also why I'm a little I will have a list of everyone who bought me a coffee in August. How's that? So I really do appreciate it. You guys don't know. It makes me feel appreciated. It makes me feel like you actually want me to keep going. Anyway, so, yeah, and you can subscribe. And you can even share these out. And you can, I'm going to be at 10,000 subscribers before we know it. Which, thank you. My goodness, 10,000 subscribers for my little old channel. I don't really look at numbers, but that's amazing to me. There's that many of you out there. So comment, leave a comment. If you do all that, you see, then more people will see the films. And more fun, right? More fun for everybody. So I really hope you enjoy games. And again, this is the July edition of the Mysterious Domain Movie Palace Summer Drive-In Double Feature. The other feature is the thriller episode, The Closed Cabinet. So those are for July. Thank you and have a great time. Take care. Bye-bye.